Welcome back to the channel, and in this video we're going to do a continuation of this part here, except we're going to be doing this using 3D AutoCAD. So if you haven't checked out my video of me doing this in 2D, or you're just interested in seeing both of the concepts, go ahead and take a look at that video. But in this one we're going to be doing it in 3D. Before I get started, I just want to extend a warm welcome and thank you to all the people that have been tuning in to these videos and helping this channel grow. So I want to send a special thank you. And for those of you who are continuing to come in and just watching, please consider hitting that subscribe button. But before we get started, we're going to do a normal breakdown. Now, I did a really in-depth breakdown of this one on the AutoCAD video. So if you want to go and check that out, and not look at the 2D portion of that one at all, the breakdown should be in the first, I would say, about 4 or 5 minutes of that video. But in this one, it's going to be the exact same thing as far as the breakdown. We have everything that we need here. We can figure out the radius. We got all of our radii, I should say. We do have our lengths, and we do have our width, our overall width of this one. So there's kind of really no need to further break this one down, as if you go and watch that video, it's a real in-depth one. You know, we even figure out what's the distance between these two centers. And if you didn't find that video out, I'll give you a spoiler alert. That number should be 45. But we're not going to need that for this video. All we're going to need to be able to do is once we create this S shape, extrude it, and you're going to see this one is going to go a lot quicker. All right, so let's go ahead and start a new drawing. And we tend to do that either by selecting this plus button here, or you can click on the new icon here. Now you can see that I have a couple of different tabs here open. The one that we did on the 2D drafting one is here. Once again, I'm kind of referring you back if you want to go take a look at that video. Alright, so we're going to jump from this one, and we're just going to hit the plus here. We're going to do all our normal stuff that we normally do, and I'll go ahead and adjust my ribbon here in a second. Go ahead and put it on the home one. And we're going to turn off our grid, which I never ever use that grid, but I keep explaining or telling you that I'll do that in a future video, and I'm going to make sure I do that here shortly. Let's go ahead and check our O-snaps. So these are going to be my typical running O-snaps that I do like to have turned on. And one other thing that I typically like to start having on is my ortho when I first start drawing things, right? Okay, so what do we need to do first here? We can kind of create this in a multitude of different ways here. We can start off with a line going straight up, and we do have the overall height of here, which is going to be set at 95. So we know no matter what, our shape is sitting right here at this 95, right? Now, if this is the true center of this, let's go ahead and attack this a little bit differently. I'm going to start by creating a line from this endpoint, and I'm going to go this direction, that 22.5. Right? So now we have a line here at the bottom that's 22.5. We have another option that we can do, or I guess a couple of different options. And I'm going to give you a couple of different ways of thinking about things. So the first thing that you can do, you can always select this line here. I can select on this back grip here, hit the space bar one time, C enter, and that's just going to tell me to copy that and then place it here, right? So by far that's the easiest thing to do. If you're not used to that, by all means go ahead and use the copy command, right? You can go ahead and use the copy, select the object, hit enter, and pick this back base point, and then click here. And you know, just because if I want to be a little bit difficult, I can also use the rotate command, right? So we saw me use this one once again when I created that 2D drawing there, but I can go to rotate. I can select this line here, hit enter, go from this midpoint, use the copy, and then tell it 180, right? All of those should be value, you know, they all should work, right? Okay, now we have to start thinking, how am I going to create this next part here? And if we go back and refer back to the drawing here, we see a couple of different options that we have, right? We need to figure out how far is it from this point to the middle, right? Well, that's easy enough. We know that the overall length is 95, and we divide 95 in half, we'll come up with that number. But we can approach it a little bit differently, right? We do have this radius here. right? So we actually know how far it is from this point all the way up to here. And that outside radius is 25, so that tells me that that distance is 50. So if I go ahead and create a 2-point circle, I should be able to get that 50, right? I can also use an arc. And let's go ahead and use the arc just, to change things up and not take the simple approach. But we're going to make this a little bit more difficult than we need to. Okay, so let's jump here, and then we're going to go to an arc. And then what do I have? I have the start point. I do have the radius. Do I know where it ends? Actually, in this case, I do know where it ends, right? So I do have a start end radius. I know where it starts, I know where it ends at, and I do know the radius. So let's go ahead and use that. I'm going to click here as my start point. So remember, anytime you create these things, think counterclockwise. I want that circle to be here. So I'm going to start here. I'm going to go straight up from here. And let's kind of zoom out a little bit. And I'm just going to touch that end point so I can get the tracking off of it. I'm going to come up, and remember that that distance here is going to be 50, right? I have to double that radius. And now I have to tell it what that radius is. Always kind of give yourself a preview. And it looks like I actually went too far, and I'll go ahead and change this here in a second. I'll change that number to 25, and you see that this is actually incorrect. Let's zoom in a little bit more. Let's try that one more time. So circle, we're going to use, arc, start end radius. So I'm going to click here. I'm going to go up from this endpoint. I'm just going to track up 50, and then I'll type in the radius of this circle, which is going to be 25. Right? So now I do have that circle, my start end radius. We can use the offset command since we do know how far it is from here going up to my other circle, right? That's just simply subtracting these two radii from each other. So if I subtract this radius from this one, that should give me the thickness, which the thickness in this case is going to be 5. So if I use the offset command, give it a distance of 5. Let's go ahead and offset it here as well as here. Right? Okay, so now we do have this all completed. Let's go ahead and put the other arc that's down here at the bottom. Once again, we can use the start end radius if you like. So start end radius. I'm going to start here. I'm going to end here. I always kind of give myself a preview coming out of it, and radius in this case is 2.5. Okay. So now we have everything that we need to complete the top half of this, right? So we're just going to use that rotate command again, and that's kind of why I preferenced this video with giving you that option. Let's go ahead and come to the top here and delete this one. Let's go to rotate. Let's highlight all of this. Enter. Let's go ahead and choose that midpoint. And then we're going to select the word copy. I'm going to tell it 180. And now we have our shape kind of created, right? Let's go ahead and delete this line here in the middle. And then remember that anytime we're creating 3D stuff, we're going to select all of this and we have to join it together, right? So just either hit the J button once you select them, or you can come here and select this icon here. You want to make sure that you're reading at the bottom. I have 10 objects converted to one polyline. You have to make sure that it says one polyline. If it's anything more than one, then you're going to have a problem when it comes to creating the 3D part of it. All right, so let's go ahead and make this into an isometric. So I select that on the corner here. I'm just going to rotate it around. Now I see where it says front, right, and top. Let's go ahead and switch AutoCAD over to 3D. Remember, we're going to do that with the little sprocket here. Click the fly up, go to 3D modeling. You're going to give it a second and the ribbon should change. And then we're going to also switch out of the wireframe just so I can take advantage of my gizmos. So I'm going to get out of 2D wireframe. And I'm going to come down to where it says wireframe. Okay. Once you see the icon or your UCS change, you know that you're in a 3D environment. Let's go ahead and zoom out just a hair here. I want to rotate this standing up, right? So what I'm going to do, let's get out of the pan command here, is we want to highlight all of this. So I'm just going to put a highlight around all of this. Your rotate gizmo should show up because it is already selected here. I'm going to select this red axis, and then I'm just going to stand it going up. So this is another reason why you want to have your ortho turned on. That way when I come straight up from it, it will rotate it up at a 90 degree. Let's escape out of here. Go ahead and use the extrude command. Go ahead and select your S shape here, hit enter. I'm going to send it this direction, right? And I can send it to forward or backwards, but I'm just going to send it this direction here. Give it a distance of 15. And now we do have our S shape already created for us. Let's go ahead and take a look at this using shades of gray. And now you can see if you want to compare this, it looks exactly like what we created using the 2D portion, right? So if I jump back to this one, it looks just like this icon here. And, you know, minus a few tangential lines here that are kind of going off on here. But it looks, you know, primarily exactly like what we created in the 2D video. Okay, now we're ready to start doing the 3D stuff, right? The 3D drafting, I should say, or doing our dimensioning. Remember that this is probably going to be your most important stuff anytime you're doing any drafting in general. If you can't put dimensions to a drawing, that's going to be the primary goal of any kind of drafting. So it's really nice to create 3D models, but the drafting portion of it is super important. So what I did there is I just went ahead and erased my viewport. Let's go ahead and make this on an A size title block, right? So remember the dimensions for an A size is going to be our 8.5 by 11 or 11 by 8.5. Those numbers can be changed depending on which orientation you want to put your drawing in. So I'm going to start off with a rectangle, 0, 0, hit enter, 11, 8.5, enter. Zoom out. Let's give it an offset, 0.25, enter. Click here and come down. Okay, so now we got to match this paper up to our actual title block. Remember, we always do that if we right click on layout 1 and we go to page setup manager. If you don't remember doing it that way, you can always come here and click on the layout tab and then go to page setup. Exactly the same thing is going to happen. This dialog box should appear. Go to modify. We're going to use a DWG, the PDF. Going to use an ANSI full bleed. Scroll up one hair. 11 by 8.5. I can use the extents. Let's go ahead and center this plot. It's automatically set to 1:1. Hit OK. And then close. And now your paper should match what you have here. Alright, so once again, I don't want to bore you with making layers and things of that nature. You can go back to the other video where I did this one, and you're going to see all the layers and things of that nature that I created. All of the same principles that apply to that is going to, you know, apply to any time you're doing any kind of drafting stuff. So if that's something that you're interested in, I don't want to make these videos too long for you, but if that's what you're interested in, please refer back to that video and you can take a look at the drafting portion of that and where I set up the layers and all these pretty colors and things of that nature for the title block. Here is just going to be really super quick for us. Let's go ahead and select base. And remember that if you don't have this little icon here, typically it's also here in the layout tab. I'm going to select the drop down here and choose base, and I'm going to go for model space. Remember that we did create this in model space. If I drew it in Inventor, I can pull it from Inventor as well, but I'm just going to pull this from model space. The front view is always going to be the one that should follow your cursor around anytime you insert the first view. You can change it here, but we're going to use it here. We're going to select somewhere that looks good. Hit the enter button. Then I'll come over and select here. And I'll come up and place one right up here in the corner. Once I'm done selecting that last view there, go ahead and hit enter. And you can see that you have everything you need here. I'm just going to select this one and adjust it by going to the edit view. Select the drop down. And let's go ahead and make it visible lines, and it'll look exactly like what we created there in 2D. Okay. All right. Now let's go ahead and put some quick dimensions on this thing. The way we're going to do that, I'm just going to go to D, enter. Remember, you always have to set up your dimension style first. We're in paper space, so 1:1 is perfectly fine. So therefore, it doesn't matter which one of these you use. I'm going to go to modify. And I always start from the right to the left. You know, kind of way my backwards brain works here. So I'm going to go to my primary units. I'm going to suppress the trailing zeros here. Underneath the fit, this should be set to 1. Under the text, let's make our text a little bit smaller by 0.125. symbols and arrows. And let's go ahead and turn off the center marks. Hit OK and hit close. All right, we're going to go ahead and put some center marks on here as well. So let's go ahead and use the center mark. We're going to go to the annotation tab here. Go ahead and put some center marks. And I'm going to start selecting these curves here. Let's zoom in and do these as well. All right. Should be all set to go. Let's go ahead and do our dimensioning. So I'll just use the linear dimension. Let's go from this endpoint to maybe this center here. And now you can see that this is what I was referring to, that sometimes when you're selecting your dimensions, it does matter the orientation or the order that you selected them in. So remember that I selected this one from the bottom going up, therefore it throws the dimension here to the top. Let me go ahead and delete that. And I come back and I use a linear dimension. And I go from this endpoint to here. It should throw that dimension to the bottom, right? So that's kind of one of those sneaky little rules of AutoCAD. If you kind of create your dimensions using that in mind, then it will save you on your keystroke. So for example, if I know that I want this next dimension here to be going out to this direction, I'll always select this endpoint first, going to this endpoint. And therefore it will kick it out this way. If I select it in the other order, it's going to kick that dimension out here to the right. So that's one of those things you can keep in mind, and it'll help you with your keystrokes, or at least speed up your drawings, and that way you don't have to go ahead and modify those later. All right, and I'm just going to kind of continue and put some more dimensions on here. Let's go ahead and put the overall dimension on this top one here. So I'm going from here to that midpoint. Likewise, I want that dimension to kick out that direction. So therefore, when I go to the linear dimension, come from here to that endpoint. All right, let's go ahead and put some radius dimensions on here. And here's a shortcut for you. If you don't want to go up here and find these, or if you're on the Home tab, one of the things I always remember is that I go with D. So that D stands for dimension. And if I want to do a radius dimension, it's just the first two letters of radius. So DRA. Go ahead and hit enter. And then I can select here. I'll just hit the enter button to take me back to the radius command. Select here. Likewise here at the bottom. Same with my linear dimension. If I want to use a linear dimension, I can type in DLI, enter. And that way you're going to get your linear dimensions without having to go up there and find them. And that's going to work for all of your dimensions, right? And I just hit the enter button just to kind of speed up things there. So that's kind of your little advanced step for today. Lastly, all you have to do now is go ahead and use the edit command, and I'm just typing in ED. Go ahead and hit the end button, hit enter, 2, and let's put my caps lock on, 2 places. Do the same with the next one here. And then finally here at the bottom. Okay. And that's going to be kind of a rough drawing for this one really quickly for you, right? So hopefully you enjoyed this video, and thank you for tuning in and keep coming back to these videos. The next time I'm going to do this, I'm going to attempt to do it in Inventor, and I'm going to try to use sheet metaling for this one, right? So these contour bends, and I'm kind of giving you a little hint there by using contour bends. The benefit of putting this in 3D is figuring out how far this is or how long this is, right? And in that video, I'm also going to refer back to this one, and we're going to try to calculate how long this shape would be, and then we're going to do a comparison to what we're going to have in Inventor. So if that's something that you're interested in, stay tuned for that video. And thank you for watching, and keep coming back and watching these videos. I really do appreciate it. And thank you for all you new subscribers. Y'all have a good day.